all CEOs, me included, we don't actually know what we're doing.
They're all sharks, so all you got to do, though, is know shark behavior.
I don't think we've ever talked about this before, guys.
We can capture all of the wallet share.
First place you start is with the product.
That's just the first nut.
This is the Capital Stack. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Capital Stack podcast. My name is David Paul. I am the host, where we talk to founders, entrepreneurs, and investors about all things value creation and startups. Today, I am talking to George Wang, who is an investor at AV8 VC, which is hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital money within a couple of funds, mainly focused on seed and Series A. George is focused on their healthcare practice, which I am very curious about. I'm really lucky to know George because he is very knowledgeable about this black box, which is healthcare technology. I want to loosen George up a little bit, because George, what do you think of this?
Is that recent?
Yeah, tell it to the audience that's not watching on YouTube. What do you think of that?
David is missing one of his front canines.
Yeah, I'm missing. Do I look bad? Do I look badass? Do I look like a hockey player?
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like it looks so clean that it looks like you did a stunt or something. What happened?
Yeah, I bit into a pretzel wrong.
Get out of here.
Yeah, no, I have
no
way. It's a long story, but
okay,
and it's not important. I want to talk about healthcare tech, and I want to talk about your journey. I have so many questions. I actually don't prep a lot for podcasts, but you're somebody okay. I definitely want to learn from because you know so much about so much. So give me a little bit about the George Wang story and then AV8, and then we'll go into my questions.
Yeah, happy to. So started my career off in healthcare consulting. We could talk probably a bit about that later. But essentially, I was like 23-year-old analyst, just like an Excel junkie for my partners for 2 years. But we sold a lot of work to health system CFOs. And it was eye-opening, I think, at 23, just to see how this industry operated. And then after 2 years, this is when I think New York health tech really blossomed. This was 2017, 2018. ZocDoc had been a unicorn for a while. Oscar was about the time where they really scaled. And also Flatiron got their exit. And so all based in New York, all downtown. And you started to see a lot more people paying attention to it. I think simply the fact that you had a lot of early employees at these companies, leave after those exits and start a few companies of their own. And I briefly worked at this one company called OneOncology, which just got acquired by AmerisourceBergen. That was announced maybe a month ago. And this was essentially the first 10 employees at Flatiron Health. Worked briefly there, but got offered this seat to be an early stage healthcare investor at Global Founders Capital, or GFC for short. I spent my 2 years as a VC analyst, associate, whatever, there. COVID hit, and ended up helping to start my own fund called Valiant Capital. This was in late 2020. I was there for, I think, 2.5 years. We were trying to raise for a Series A fund, half enterprise SaaS, half healthcare, mostly centered around Series A, early growth style of investing. Learned a lot there, right? Having to, manage a fund, even just formation. I think the whole process there was interesting of itself. And then, of course, pitching essentially what is a financial product to LPs and raising money was a education in of itself. We raised a good bit there and deployed it all. But when macro tailwinds shifted, ultimately didn't look like we were going to raise the rest of the fund. And so ended up here at AV8 Ventures based in Palo Alto, working for two GPs. that I've known for quite a while. And the fund is not all healthcare. It's really, I would say, a Series A fund on anything B2B. Healthcare being one of the industries that we focus on quite a bit. Have known Rashida for 5 years now, and joined officially last September.
Awesome. Super, super cool career trajectory. Going in one direction, had to quickly pivot, still in the game, and still working for a great firm. I see them in the news, and they fund some pretty great deals.
What I really wanted was, it's nice to not, I don't mind. Probably one day we'll have to, talk to LPs again and do it on my own. It's nice to just be able to invest,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a little bit. That's all I have to worry about. It's just working with founders.
Yeah, it is good. At the end of the day, though, you do need to know how to, I call lick boots, right?
Yeah,
because
it's its own skill. It's its own skill. It is a completely different skill set than investing.
You need to make people feel like they're the smartest people on the planet, and you need them, and like to come on this journey. And this is kind of at the end of the cycle where everybody was an investor and everyone was going up to the right, and everyone thought they could do this. And I think we're gonna have a great blading of the industry where a lot of tourists are no longer going to be here.
Yeah. No, I'm sure our conversation will lead that way. But it's interesting to see the effects of the froth, both in investing and fundraising from the last 2 years, are definitely showing its effects now, I think, in 2023.
So from a healthcare, which is a rubrics of different aspects, you have payers, you have providers, you have employers, and that's just on the human health service side. There's bio, there's, pharma. How do you, as an individual, like to focus? I mean, are you mostly doing a lot of thematic investing, or are you just kind of going geo? Like, how do you get smart?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everyone at the early stage will tell you that they're thesis driven, which kind of you need to be, right? If you're going to take a bet, when a company is less than a year old, nothing's been built, there's no customers, they may have an MVP. That's like thesis driven investing, right? Because you're investing in the potential outcome of the business, with a thesis that you've synthesized in your head. We're probably not like the most thesis driven fund on its own. But we do that, right? There are spaces that we like, quote unquote, cover and like spend a lot of time in and try to find founders and companies. So I think for the last 2 years, and I think this, David, I probably spent, most of my time in healthcare payments. And there's a couple companies that I liked, and still like, but it's one of those things where the entire sector was looking at it, and so those companies are a bit hot, if you will, at the moment. And if we're talking about, I think maybe like a macro shift in healthcare VC in itself, I think we're starting to see a bit of froth come back in, and happy to comment more on that. But at the moment, and these are like two sectors that I've always liked, rather just one, I would say, is life sciences software. And that is like the reason why I like healthcare is that it's not just like one industry, right? I joke that like almost each care specialty could be its own industry in of itself, because there's so many nuances, different set of like players, doctors, entities, payers involved. And the other one is it's more kind of abstract, the way that we talk about it. But I think it's a nuance of spending so much time in healthcare, looking at digital health. We still look at digital health, but the way that we describe it is we enjoy anything that is taking on risk, which is also, I think, that is following a broader trend in healthcare. I don't want to say value-based care, because that's like the original term for it, because that used to mean different things like bundled rates for a care journey. But I think if you kind of take a step back and just say anything taking risk, it makes it more interesting because it opens up a different, world of opportunities. And happy to dive in more on that. But essentially what we say is a lot of these companies start looking like fintech companies, at scale. Because if you're taking on risk, you essentially created this stable recurring cash flow, and you just have to deliver care, right, in some format, whether you own it or you don't own it, or maybe you have partners. But you are making a bet that you can deliver care below what someone is paying you monthly or annually to do so, and you keep either 100% of the profits or a rev share of that. But the reason why I say it almost looks like a fintech company is that, like, I think even the way that we can maybe start valuing these companies, and even operationally, right? Like, these founders all of a sudden starting caring about cash flow, right, and what you do with that, rather than like a revenue multiple trading on an enterprise value multiple, right, or a net revenue multiple. And so that's kind of what I mean by that. Happy to dive in more because I know it's pretty high level. And then I would say for the last year, spending a lot of time in specialty pharma.
Yes, I want to talk about specialty pharma. That's on my list.
Yeah.
But first, before we do that, I want to talk about your superpower, right? And this isn't not just my observation. This is observation from lots of people I talk to in the field about this unicorn that is George Wang. And that is, George, how do you get allocation, bro? You are the allocation. You create allocation when there is none.
Well, thank you, David. I'll take that as a compliment. Not sure who you're speaking to or who these viewers are. It's funny because, this is one thing I remember, like, all LPs asking is, right? The biggest question is, like, what is your edge, I could talk about that process a little bit differently. Someone asked me this recently. I think it was maybe a VC who just maybe started their investing career like a year into it. I would say my first partner always liked using the word like running through walls, like willing to be able to run through walls for someone. And what we meant by that was like being willing to run through a wall for a founder. Because founders notice that and they could see the difference. Back when we were fundraising at Valiant, and even now, we would say like we would try to be the most helpful investor on the cap table for somebody. And when it came down to like founder references, right, like with new founders, it's like, hey, like, what do you do to help out your portfolio companies? I say, I'd rather just show than tell. I think I have a small group of portfolio companies that I still work with from my current fund, from my previous fund. And I know each of them, right, if I reached out, would be willing to, speak on my behalf of what I've done, right? Like how willing I was to do it. And the second aspect of that, of actually getting allocation, I always say, we always, again, back at GFC, my first partner, we talked about like getting into deals that we shouldn't be getting into was like what we tried doing. We were competing against mega funds with term sheets that were like way too rich for us, right? Because they're playing a different game than us. But we would do so just to be able to like get visibility, right? To see what was going on, right? To get a look at the company, to see what was going on, why it was being invested in at this valuation, why they need a check of this size. And I think that comes down to, I think a blend of, again, like, I don't want to say like not taking no for an answer, but I think polite persistence is a way of putting it. And then, because I'm speaking to a public anonymous audience, so choosing words carefully here is, it's just like being likable, just being like a reasonable person to work with, an honest person to work with, like that someone is like, okay, like he's a dependable, honest guy. Like I can trust him with this bit of data. And I know, he won't take this and do something, negative with it, right? Or that will like kind of harm what I'm doing. And I think that's where the best bits of deal flow come from. It's just like these little tidbits, right? That like you can chase down, and it
strings that you just pull that you get.
Yeah. I used to joke in my last one is just like, like hearing stuff through the grapevine, or came from a little birdie. May not like end up in something actionable, but it could be something as simple as, oh, did you hear so and so like left this company? And it's like, oh no, I didn't. Maybe I should reach out and see what they're up to. And often that actually comes up in something, actually. When someone says that, it usually means that like that person is starting a company within the next 6 months.
Right.
And that's the best way I think of winning a deal is getting in there early, building a relationship, right?
Belly to belly.
Yeah. When I speak to a founder, I actually don't like it when they have to pitch. I think it's unnatural. Like this isn't Shark Tank, right? Like it shouldn't be like Shark Tank where you're like pitching me on something, especially at the seed in health tech. I mean, come on. It could be like 2 more years before we see any dollar, and then like another 2 to 3 years after that before we see like a real substantial business. And it's more so like, like I think of this job as like being an actual like capital partner and doing more so than that.
Cool. So, I really felt interested about kind of what you said, and you kind of quoted healthcare VC froth, and from somebody that's more of a tourist in healthcare. I just did my first healthcare IT deal. It was not my first of my new firm in January, and I'm kind of getting caught up. Is healthcare, and so I don't like play because I know you guys all compete against each other, and all know each other, and it's a closed club. But like when you say healthcare VC froth, is that how? Like, what's the similarity and what's the differences between that and just VC froth? Is it? I think it is. Is it correlated or is it?
I think it's correlated. Yeah. I can't speak on other industries, right? I have a lot of friends in crypto. I wonder if they're seeing the same thing. I know U.S. early stage fintech kind of paused for a while in the last few years because all these founders, pivoted to crypto. I see a lot of stuff happening in vertical SaaS. But again, I don't spend a lot of time in it. What I mean by fraud, it's not quite like 2021, 2022 in terms of volume. But what we are seeing is like large checks again. And like large
big checks, big seeds.
Aggressive. Yeah, big seeds. We always like talk to each other, right? Like as any VC to get pricing data, right? Because we price, there's like an objective pricing. But that at the early stage, we can't tie that to like actual business performance. So it's like relative, right? For the longest time, we had no data on like what a normal A looked like because none were getting done. And then like at the pre-seed seed, like we were seeing stuff in the sub 10s, right? Like stuff like from like my first 2 years of my career where like that was like normal. Like you gave somebody like 2 on 8, right? I would say in the last 2 months, that completely went out the window again, and we're just seeing, again, it's not like 21, 2022, but it is similar in the way where, again, like fundraising processes at this stage are taking maybe 2 to 4 weeks again, right? Where like the next round gets done maybe like a month or 2 later because the investor didn't get enough allocation. I mean, I'm actually guilty of this too. I was the last deal I did that we closed in January. I first found it when there was like pre-seed allocation, and we ended up wanting more. So we just preempted the next round like a month later.
Nice. And so big surge in healthcare tech, digital health was telehealth for X, right?
Yeah,
back in 2020, 2021.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I look at it as, hey, you're aggregating providers and you're putting some tooling in together. Is there a lot of value there? Do you think? Does that industry have legs? What differentiates the wheat and the chaff?
From those companies, like from 5 years ago, or the ones now?
Well, both. I mean, like the ones that like were raised in 2021. I mean, as long as their cap table is not toxic. I'm just thinking of the category in general. No, and I have like a simple answer for that is when you talk to these digital health companies of telehealth for XYZ, right? I think it's a very apt way to put it. In the very early days, you're trying to just find any kind of patients, right? To prove out that like to your investors that the business exists, but two, like your care delivery model, right? Because if you're kind of virtualizing a specialty that has been touched, right? It was all in person before. There's also like a need to prove that it works, like in a virtual like kind of setting, right? And so the first 500,000 patients are usually D2C, right? If you like, that's
think about
expensive as fuck.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and it's like not and it's like you get in this thing of like looking at it like a consumer like product almost. Like what is LTV to CAC? And, you could probably think about some examples where maybe that was the wrong way to look at healthcare. Like, we're not selling glasses, we're suitcases, we're treating people. The difference now kind of lends back to what I was saying is there's companies, right, with the right management team and the right model and like the right approach, where all these companies, I remember like maybe when I first started, were pitching, we'll do D2C and then we'll win payer contracts, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the best way to go about it, right? You get large multi-year contracts, thousands of patients, but it's hard to do so, right? Like, this takes years to do, right? Even takes the right personnel of being able to understand how to speak to these payers. But there's companies now that I see at the seed who are coming to me with payer contracts already. And I think it's also maybe a macro trend. I'll get to that in a second. But that's interesting, right? Where, companies where it's like, I have this many lives waiting for me to tap into. I am just raising because I need capital to hire to service those people. But the macro trend that I just mentioned is, again, I think I don't want to call it VBC. I just want to say like some kind of risk-bearing contract is that like all of healthcare is interested in finding out ways to pay for performance, right? Which is kind of this bundled rate performance benchmark-based kind of contract where it's, I will pay you this, just deliver care, right? In this specialty, whatever we agreed to, and you can keep the savings.
And let's not pay MA, right? Let's leave Medicare Advantage off to the side. How can we do directly from insurance to the on-risk people? Because then you're just getting middled twice, right?
Yeah. And I think, in healthcare, back to the beginning, it's like, this murky landscape. It's a very interesting industry, right? You have a lot of entities. Everyone has their own incentives. None of it's aligned, right? Everyone says that. I think this is like and this is not like rocket science or anything unique that I'm saying here. But yeah, once you give a provider group like kind of these like parameters of, because again, like when health systems like maybe used to bill, like they would bill for whatever services they wanted to, right? And then you would get in this whole kind of issue with the payer of adjudication of how much we're actually paying, right? Then you have patients stuck with like these crazy expensive bills, and then in terms of like Medicaid, right? Like this just ends up on a state's balance sheet, right? Like in the hands of the taxpayer. And it's interesting. It's just common, I think normal psychology of like going to provider group now and saying, we're just gonna give you this much. We know we used to pay for this much, right? Through like billing, but we're just gonna give you this much in this time frame for these services. You figure it out. And like the thing is, like most of them do, right? It's like,
yeah. Necessity breeds a lot of innovation, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about specialty pharma.
Yeah. I didn't know that this would be a topic, but happy to talk about it because it also kind of like lends itself to life sciences software that I've always spent time in. I can start with that. The thesis for that is, I hate to use like outlandish terms like this, but we are like in this kind of like a boom cycle of biotech. People are calling, another golden age of life sciences and drug development. And like, it is real, right? Like, for anyone who got the COVID vaccine, which was a lot of people, right? Forgetting like everything, like we could talk about that, just like the science in of itself. Like, I hope people realize like how cool it is that like we synthesize this mRNA molecule, right? It's a biologic. That's kind of a trend, that word right there. It's an organic, it's not living, but it's a live molecule that like teaches your body to, at the cellular level or even down to molecular level to make a change in of itself, right? Rather than kind of, maybe like medicine from like 10, 20 years ago where it was inorganic molecule based and we were trying to see like what kind of effect it would have on mechanism that we're actually like changing, right? Like the way that our body kind of like operates. And that's like cool as hell, right? And this is from Moderna, which is a 15-year-old company, and they were using this tech to like find cures for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, right? And like, what time are we at? Oh, we're at 24 minutes, because I could speak on this for a bit. I mean, the stuff coming down the pipeline is unreal. Like, you know what sickle cell anemia is, right? It affects 30% of the world's population. We've always been able to treat it, right? But like for diseases like that, like we are really like capable of solving it. And so in sickle cell anemia's case, I can't remember the drug name itself. It's, it's like some molecule like name condensed, right? Is that we have this drug coming down the pipeline that will actually teach your body, right? I believe it's RNA in a viral vector to actually create normal blood cells, which is huge, right? Because you have sickle cell anemia, right? Like the way that your body respirates oxygen is that significant gap from a body with normal red blood cells, and kind of like the network effects of that it's outstanding. And so herein lies the problem of specialty pharma, right? And why it's so interesting to me is that this is just for sickle cell anemia, right? I think over half of the drugs in drug development these days are biologics like that. These researchers are stupendously smart. When I talk to some of these guys, because we do some biotech investments too, it's like I'm getting a lecture from a PhD at Oxford who is one of 5 experts on this exact thing. What I'm getting to is that it's expensive. The sickle cell drug, the list price, MRSP, if you will, is $3.6 million, right? And I think I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's maybe 30% of the world's population has it. Mm-hmm. And so if the case is that more and more drugs like this are coming out, which they are, and this is stuff of need, right? Like we are genuinely changing someone's life. Who pays for it? And the answer to that, how do we pay for that as a society is really the question. And the answer is we actually don't know. We actually have no idea. We have no idea. I'm sure you're familiar with Medicaid expansion, where it covers, it covers children now, right? Because the drug is best suited for someone with a sickle cell under 5, because you would change this kid's entire life, right? Health outcome wise, and lifestyle too. But Medicaid is a state-funded program, right? And currently we just have no solution except that this comes out of taxpayer money.
So mRNA, RNA, these biologics, I mean, that's kind of a recent phenomenon, but I feel like ambulatory infusion, home infusion has been a trend that's been going on a little bit longer than that through just, infusion drugs, right? So what was the driver of that? Was it just personalized medicine?
Can you repeat the question again? So
I feel like growth in specialty pharma came before COVID a little bit. There was more I just saw this big mass push to ambulatory surgery centers, infusions, home infusion. Yeah. So what was the big driver in that?
Just because it's, we can get to the meat of that really quickly. And it's that, and it starts with the list price I was talking about. No one in the world actually pays that. By the way, nobody pays 100% of the list. It's like buying a car. This is the analogy we're joking about. Actually, we have a company, Spec Pharma, by the way. This is my last investment. We're joking about this at a recent in-person it's like buying a car. You never buy a car at list price. But whatever discount you get isn't a flat discount, right? It's like if you and I walked into one dealership and bought the same car, we would probably get different discounts on it. The thing I think is interesting here is I wouldn't really know, they wouldn't tell me what you got, right? We could talk about it together. But I say that because this is being conducted by the PBMs at the moment, right? And I think people have referred to PBMs as a genuine black box.
The devil. I think people refer to them as Satan.
Yeah. I'm going to be cautious about my words when speaking about them, but it's always been privatized. And they're owned by payers now, which is kind of nice because it's now okay. The people who actually foot the bill have control of these entities, but these PBMs go out to manufacturers, and they're the ones that built the formularies, right, for insurance plans, which is this is the list of drugs that we will offer, we will cover for our membership. And if you're Optum and you're serving United, that's quite a number of lives and you have bargaining power, right? But what that PBM gets on a certain drug from a manufacturer, is unknown to the public, and it's unknown to everyone else in the industry except the manufacturer, of course. That's like one bit of the wonkiness. But what happened also, I think, when these drugs are starting to come out is like you would expect to get this at a hospital, right? Like this is like advanced medicine. You probably want to like get it. I'm in LA, but you probably want to get it a place at Cedars in New York. You probably want to go to Sinai or Presby, right? Because that's where you feel safe, where you feel comfortable. And again, I'm being cautious with my words about what hospitals are doing here. But sometime in the last decade, they've all kind of like obtained their own pharmacy licenses, right? Mm-hmm. And so these pharmacies would sometimes negate the PBMs, and they would be their existing, own GPO, group purchasing org. Because if you're a hospital, like you have scale, right? You can keep inventory. I think that's interesting to note because these biologics have expiry dates. They need to be cold stored. Some of the more expensive ones, really expensive ones, like Zolgensma, I think in 2022, just for CMS, because that's all the data we have, was only infused just a little over 100 times. And so that manufacturer was actually making this drug like in time for that person, right? Which is also interesting to think about. But what is going on, I think it's decently well known if anyone did a quick Google search, is that hospitals are marketing the heck out of this drug, right? There's a Transparency Act, I think, under the Trump administration about how hospitals charge for various services, right? What was funny, it was just they made it easier to see how much hospitals were charging this stuff up. Can't remember the consulting firm that does this annual report, but I think it was over 50% were getting marked up over 200% of the list price. And again, it's the real markup is more than that because the hospitals weren't getting this at list price; they got a discount. And then I think like 30% were marked up over like 300%, right? Yeah. And even with even through Medicare too, because there's like this Part B loophole that people were using, and there's the whole thing about rebates too. And so again, like you can guess who fits the bill at the end of the day, and it's the payers, and that gets into a whole kind of funny issue itself where you have this adjudication thing going on where it's like a doctor's like, hey, like this patient needs this drug because it's actually probably life-saving. It's like a heavy need for it, right? Like this isn't some kind of like nice to have kind of infusion done. So the payer's in a spot of like, I can't say no, like this is going to end up in the press, but I also don't want to, cover for something that's $1 million for this one life. And so there's been this phenomenon known as white bagging that is also well written about. And it has that name because what some payers are doing in cases like this is that they're actually going to straight to the manufacturer, buying the drug and shipping it, white bagging it to the patient's household and telling them to go just bring it to an infusion center and get this done there, right? Mm-hmm. Or like, in the less, I call it sketchy, in the less sketchy case of mailing it to whoever prescribed you, right? Which is probably a specialist, right? Because these are drugs that are most often prescribed by specialists who are private practice. But for various reasons, those specialists, and there's a lot of reasons why, weren't doing these infusions in-house in their own practice for their own patients and sending it back to the local health system for the patient to get the drug.
Got it. The sketchy land of healthcare.
Yeah.
George, I got to go pick up my twins, and there's a gazillion questions I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to have you back on. We're getting drinks in 2 weeks, aren't we? Yeah,
you're in LA. I can't wait.
All right, cool. We're gonna get hammered. So with that, everybody, quick question, George. What's your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. Okay, wow. This is so people know I read a lot of sci-fi. I mean, like what BC doesn't. But my favorite novel ever, and I don't know, I can't explain to you why I like it. It's called Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. There's a movie, actually. It was adapted to it. Like, it's always been adapted because the British love adapting these Victorian novels. It's called Emma, and it's about the author. listen, I don't read a lot of Victorian, novels. I have, in college and high school. Just for some reason, I think I've read this one maybe like a dozen times.
Got it. Okay. Best piece of business advice, investing advice. How about that? Best piece of investing advice you've ever received.
Oh man, there's a lot. I think that's why I love this job, right? You learn something new every week. I think the one that I use the most, it's not going to make you rich, but it may stop you from big losses, is I have this rule that I don't think, and again, it doesn't have to be this exactly, you'll see why, but I've always half jokingly said that I don't think I would ever work with a founder unless I could know that I could get a beer with him. I could hang out with him on the weekend. It doesn't have to be beer, but again, when we're investing at this stage, you're entering like a 5-7 year relationship, right? And it gets into people's lives. It's
hard to work with assholes. It really is. Yeah, it's not a 9-to-5 kind of like gig, right? Like you're partnering up for a long relationship, and it's like genuine thing where it's like you don't have to be friends, but it's like, do I want to talk? Like, if I need to, can I talk to you every week? Like on a Sunday night for the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. I FaceTime my guys at like 2 a.m.
Sure. Yeah. So call it the beer test. Can I? Would I like getting a beer with you? Not feel like it's like work.
Actually, thank you everybody for listening to the Capital Stack. We drop an episode every Tuesday. If you like it, subscribe. If you have an awesome health tech opportunity, look up George Wang. He's on LinkedIn. He doesn't have a picture because he's a fucking weirdo. Hit him up. And we will see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Capital Stack Podcast. Make sure to share this with someone you know that can benefit from this content. Remember to support this show by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. David Paul is the founder and general partner at DWP Capital. All opinions expressed by David and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of DWP Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. David and guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed on this podcast.